What do you do when you see shadows in your room? What can you say when you hear voices down the hall? What can you do when you see eldritch lights in the sky? Do you have the strength to embrace the impossible, to believe in the unbelievable, to go beyond the beyond? Each week we take a journey into the unexplained, the paranormal and the weird. And tonight, I have a very special gift for you today. We are going to talk about near-death experiences. Now, near-death experiences are something that I know quite a bit about for many reasons. I'm going to tell you two near-death experiences, one that belonged to my mother and one belonged to me. I will talk a little bit about what near-death experiences are and what they are not. But mostly we're just going to explore. Now, this is our second show, and I want to tell you a little bit about me. See, the paranormal is pretty much my life, and it has been for a very long time. Like I say, I can't call myself a believer, but I consider myself an explorer. There are certain things I believe for sure, but a general rule is that I have to experience it myself to believe in it. Now, there are certain things I have experienced. I've experienced plenty of ghost sightings because I've spent a great deal of my life looking for them. And I have explored, sorry about that. And I have explored and gone through a near-death experience. So what is a near-death experience? Well, if you go online and you type in near-death experience and you don't go to like a parapsychological research site, then you're probably going to get this story that something happens, you go brain dead, all of a sudden you're in this tunnel with this light. There are friends of yours that are around you, and you start to go forward into this in this tunnel, but all of a sudden you stop and you can't go any further, but you want to stay, but something tells you you have to go back. Now, this is pretty much a classic near-death experience, and skeptics will tell you that it's the brain dying which causes the light, but I've got news for you, buddy. Here's the thing. Only 30 to 40% of near-death experiences has the bright light. And it completely changes when you go overseas. See, in Japan, when you have a near-death experience, they don't get the light. What they do get, however, is a bridge going over the water into a garden. And what's interesting is that almost all cultures have near-death experiences. And they're completely different depending on what your religion is and what your cultural center is. If you have a near-death experience in India, there's a very good chance you're going to meet Vishnu or other Hindu gods. If you're in the Far East, well, there's always that garden and a bridge. If you're Western, then you're probably going to meet either angels or Jesus. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that near-death experiences correlate to the culture in which they're being experienced. So this goes to my belief that pretty much all religions are the same, but I'm not going to get too deeply into that. What I am going to do is I am going to tell you some stories. I'll tell you my near-death experience first. And this has been recorded before. I was on the Tippa podcast, and I told the story. But since this is my podcast, I think I should tell it. So, you ready? Okay, so 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. I went into the hospital and had surgery on it. I was in, God, it's kind of hard to talk about. I was in ICU for about 2 days, and then when I came out, they put me in a regular bed. And I was just laying in that regular bed. It was a few hours when I got out of ICU, then all of a sudden I was somewhere else. I wasn't asleep. I don't think it was the drugs, because this is not something I would hallucinate. And it completely changed my life forever in ways that is really hard to tell you. Because a real near-death experience changes you. It changes you forever. And there's no going back. And you lose friends, and you lose family. But you touch something that is so much greater than you that you know this is the way you're supposed to go. And my near-death experience was intense. So anyways, I was lying in that bed, and I was somewhere else. This is really hard to explain because I don't think that humans can understand this. But I think we're given just a glimpse, just a taste of the afterlife, so we can understand it. Instantly, I was floating, and I was inside this big room. And it looked like everything was made of pixels, kind of like a computer. And it was made of geometric shapes, kind of like sacred geometry. But it was unlike anything I've ever experienced before. I couldn't hear a thing, and I could only float. In front of me, there were these stairs, and so I started to go up the stairs. And then I got to a second floor, and I could feel things watching me. I didn't see anybody. I didn't see guardians or angels or gods or demons or anything. I just saw these pixelated walls that looked like they were made of marble. Now, as I went upstairs, I noticed that the walls I was looking at had soot on them and were dirty. And this made me feel sad for some reason. In the center of the room was a stage. And on the stage was this woman made of boxes. I know that sounds weird, but she was made of geometric shapes, but I could kind of recognize her, but I don't think I've met her, or I haven't met her yet. Or she might have been a spirit, I don't know. But she kept on saying, "Come closer to me." And I did. But as I got closer to her, I felt like I was being drawn up the staircase again. So I started going up the stairs once more. And all of a sudden, I was in two places at once. They call it bilocation. And I felt that I was in my bed, but I was in this other place at the exact same time. And I started to flash between the places, between whatever this purgatory was and my room. And all of a sudden, I was back in my bed. And I was terrified. I had no idea what happened to me. And I was scared to death. It was very hard for me to sleep that night. So yeah, that's my near-death experience. Now the question is, how much of this do I remember? Because everything was very vague. But the stuff I will remember forever. After that, I thought about it, and I started to research near-death experiences. See, near-death experiences have several things in them that make them NDEs. And one of the most important things is that you pass the threshold, which is what I did, that there is a life review. What is a life review, you may ask? Well, let's look at Daniel Brinkley. See, Daniel Brinkley was this guy who was struck by lightning. He's been struck by lightning like 3 times. He is the poster child for near-death experiences. And when he had his life review, he was sat in front of a bunch of screens, and he was shown and he felt everything that he did to everyone. Now, everyone here is not perfect, and we all hurt people, whether we know it or not. But Daniel felt all of this. Now, that's what we call a life review. But my life review was different, as was everything in my near-death experience. You see, my life review was the fact that I knew my soul wasn't clean. And that I had gone through so much pain and suffering from the last couple of years. And I've hurt a lot of people. I still don't know how to deal with people. But it was that which showed me this. It also showed me that I was on the wrong path and that I had to make a change quickly, which is something that I did, for better or worse. Now, when I say that a near-death experience changes your whole entire life, I am not kidding. In fact, you're never the same afterwards. And your friends are not going to understand you. And you're going to be made fun of. You're going to be ridiculed. You're going to be told that it was drugs in the hospital. You're going to be told that you were just dreaming. But you know, people who have this experience know it's not a dream. Because it feels something completely different. And all that happened to me. I lost a lot of friends. But, maybe that's not the path I was supposed to be on. I'm going to tell you another story about a near-death experience, and this one blows mine away. This is my mother's near-death experience, and it's a religious experience. See, my mom was in the hospital, and this was back in 1999. And they gave her a shot, and she went into anaphylactic shock. And all of a sudden, and this is interesting, she was in a room where it was made of grid lines. And she was on this, what did she say? It was like almost like a guitar string. And there were all these little droplets on these guitar strings that she could see. I say it's a guitar string, but that's kind of how she explained it. And every few seconds, she would see the guitar string vibrate. And the little droplets would be sent into eternity or hell or wherever they go. Now, let's keep in mind here that my mom is a very devout Christian. So her near-death experience is going to be filtered through that. Anyways, my mom was scared. She was scared that she would be dropped out into eternity. And she knew that there were people that she treated wrong. My apologies for that. Anyhow, so she was terrified. She had unforgiveness in her heart. And she could hear a voice telling her that she had unforgiveness in her heart. And that she needed to make it right. Now, what's this called, kids? This is called a life review. So, number one, my mom has gone past the threshold and she has a life review. But this is where it gets interesting. Because my mom's near-death experience had something in it that sets it apart from basically any near-death experience I've heard. And that she has veridical information, and she was given information from the future. What do I mean by that? So after she was watching these little souls being dropped into this abyss, she ended up in the Middle East, and she was in a hospital. And it seems that we were at war. Now keep in mind, this was 1999. This was way before 9/11. And she saw all these kids, all these like 19-year-olds and 18-year-old soldiers dying in this hospital in the Middle East, like they've gone through a war. And she was told that this was happening, that a great trial was coming. And she was told to pray for them. See, this interests me because when I'm into veridical information, it means that there is information that can be verified. What happened, it's 1999, but what happens 2 years later? 9/11 happens and we go to war. My mom saw that 3 years before it happened. And I promise on my father's grave, I promise on absolutely everything that this happened. Even if my mom was making up the near-death experience, how could she know that we were going to have a war in 3 years? So this is why I believe, even before my experience, my mom's experience made me believe that there is something out there. Now, all of a sudden, my mom starts hearing a voice and she claims it's Jesus, saying that you have unforgiveness in your heart and that you must go away. And my mom starts screaming, I have unforgiveness in my heart. And they revive her and she's back and she's crying and screaming, I have unforgiveness in my heart, and in total fear. And she told us all this. And I took a class on near-death experiences through the Ryan classroom, Ryan Research Classroom, which you can look up online. The Ryan Institute, it's the biggest parapsychology institute in the world, and it's pretty much started parapsychology. And when I talk about a parapsychology institute that's big, it means it's really tiny because parapsychology is not very well known right now. But I took a class, and just to understand what I experienced and what my mom experienced. And I told the teachers my experiences, and they said, yeah, that's a near-death experience. So yeah, I believe in near-death experiences. I believe completely in them. Now, who discovered near-death experiences? Well, this has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. We know that ancient Egyptians had them. We know that pretty much every culture has had a form of it. So, but it was Raymond Moody, who I believe wrote the book Life After Life, who was a doctor, who started to experience that his patients were having these near-death experiences. And so he wrote a book on it. And he's the one who came up with the light at the end of the tunnel and all your typical near-death experience things. However, that was only a small part of the story. Now, when Raymond Moody released his book, it was a bestseller, and through the 80s, this became a more popular thing to know. And then in the 90s, radio shows would talk about it. And of course now in the paranormal century, we all talk about it. Now skeptics may still say that it's the brain dying, but while my experience, it could have been something else, but I know in my heart it wasn't. There are certain experiences where the subject is completely brain dead. And there is absolutely there's no life in them. And they have these experiences where they walk in gardens and they see their loved ones. And the most interesting thing about a lot of near-death experiences is that people will report that they are being operated on. They will watch, while they're being operated on, they will float to the ceiling and they will watch the exact thing, and then they will tell the doctor afterwards that this is what they saw. And a lot of this is documented. This ain't no fairy stories. This is documented stuff. Now, not all near-death experiences have this, but a few do. And it's interesting because if you can explain to the doctor or the paramedics what you are doing, well, then you can't say it's fake. You just can't. Cases of this. So, stop. So, we're going to go on, and I told you about my case. I told you about my mom's case. These are the two cases I know personally. So, we're going to go on to the Near-Death Experience website. You know, the Near-Death Experience website is at nderf.org, NDERF. And what's cool about this website is that people write all their different experiences. And you can share your near-death experience. And I'm going to read a couple of these to you. This is by someone by the name of Joan Kay. And this was 1/21/2016. I was above everything. The first thing I noticed was an amazing feeling of peace like I've never experienced. All fear, anger, sadness, and negative emotions were gone. I felt amazing. I could see myself in the doctors and the nurses and the medical staff, but they were only an observation. I had no feeling or judgment on them. They just were, and I just was. And then I looked at myself, and I was light. She had a respiratory arrest during anesthetic surgery. So like me, it was during surgery. Okay, so the interesting thing about this is that when I had my experience, I didn't feel any emotions. Other than kind of like, I knew what I should be feeling, but I couldn't feel anything. I can't say I was at peace, but I was just there. I was just existing. And it interests me that this person, feels the same way. When you're there, when you're on the other side, it's a completely different experience. And that's just all there is to it. You don't have a body. You don't have a mind. You don't have anything but your pure spirit. And what does that mean? What is pure spirit? What is a spirit? What is a soul? We just don't know. We don't know what this is. I'm not someone who says what something is. Like I said, I explore it. So could this be a hallucination or something? I guess it could be. I mean, anything's possible, right? But sure as hell didn't feel like one. Anyhow, let's go on. What I want to find is... Oh, here's an interesting one right here. This is from France. It's from someone by the name of Courtney. And this is what she experienced. I quickly see a few things from my life. I feel the arrival of somebody behind me on the left. It is my deceased father. I can communicate with him without words or any language except love. He is guiding me by making me understand that I have a choice. I can choose to live and to experience love on earth. I see the realization of the scenario of my death, the sadness of my loved ones, My friends returning to Paris without me, and the sorrow of my little sister, it's unbearable to me. And so, Court and I almost died from drowning during canoe ride. How about a few more? Let's see if we can find one from Japan. Well, this isn't Japan. This is Peru. And this one sounds very interesting. This is Raphael A. I remember that everything snowed out in a white color. I wasn't there for a second, and for eternity, I remembered my lover, now his wife, my family and my life. I also thought about all my future plans. I saw them in a graphic way, as if come to life. I've never experienced this kind of revelation about what I wanted to do or how I feel about my loved ones in reality. Okay, so this isn't a near-death experience, but it seems that there's some out-of-body travel here. Now, here's something that I was told in class, is that a near-death experience, you do not have to be near-death in order to experience it. If you're close to death, or you're very afraid of death, it can trigger basically kicking your soul out of your body. And in a way, that's what happened to me. I mean, I was just out of the ICU, and I was fine. And in a way, I felt like I was remembering something that I had in surgery, but it just came back to me. So I wasn't in any danger. But there were complications in my surgery. Here's someone who was in ICU. She calls it Francisco, he calls it a possible NDE. When I got up, I turned around following an intense light of intense color. I was flooded with a mountain of pleasant memories. Memories of the ones in my life passed before me. The light pushed me into a tunnel that was also a brilliant color, inviting me to go through with some effort. I understand that behind the light was God. I understand that I had wasted so much of my life. With great effort, I decided to not go into the tunnel. Now, this is an interesting one because I felt the same way. I felt after my near-death experience, I had wasted my whole entire life. And I still feel that. I still feel that I have done some stupid things in my life and I need to rectify it. And this is why I say that my near-death experience changed my complete and total life and outlook. It's because I knew that I was on the wrong path and I needed to get on the right one. Now, see, those are a whole bunch of NDEs, and you notice they're all very quite familiar. I mean, they're very similar, but they're all very different too, depending on the culture and the belief of the person who has it. Let's take two more, and then we'll calm down for the night. Okay. See here. Looking. Okay. Let's go random. Here's someone in Germany. It's Adelheid El Probable. A probable NDE. I was lying in the lap of a young man and he said, "Have no fear, you are safe here." I had no pain anymore and no fear. It was very silent around us, until from the left side small ribbons with an open mouth passed by, where one mouth turned towards me and smiled, as if it would know me. When the young man and I were alone again, the sun was shining from the right side. Otherwise, it was dark around us. Then I wanted to know who the young man was. That's all this person writes. But what interested me about this is that this was after surgery, just like mine. Here's a fascinating one. Look at this. This is Mike, NDE 8/29/2015. I saw myself through someone else's eyes. This person was in a large barn structure covering a 100-yard area. The whole view black and gray. There were a couple of 100 figures walking around taking tiny steps with their heads looking down. I was seen about 10 yards in the foreground, but I was seen in color. I was wearing a red shirt and a yellow beam of light from the top of my head going forward. This was due to cardiac arrest. It's very, very strange. NDE, and I really don't know what to say about it, though it almost looks like he possessed someone and looked through their eyes. This is something I've never heard before. The drowning. Here's one from Japan. Now, this one does not talk about, let's see, name's Marta M. Doesn't talk about the garden, but this is interesting. Marta M, NDE, she almost drowned. I was still being pulled deeper and deeper into the ocean, but this alien calm came over me. I wasn't suffering or suffocating. My guardian angel was at my right. I knew this, but couldn't see him. He introduced himself to me earlier. He talked to me telepathically, and I could hear him with no other sound. He said, "I've done much good in my life, and I could go." Because of that reason, and that I wouldn't suffer, they put me to sleep before I felt anything. He said, I accomplished my mission, but that my life force was diminishing. If I stayed, things would be an effort and become very hard. And she made it out. So yeah, these are a bunch of NDEs, and there's hundreds of them, thousands of them. This is a common experience. This is not something that just happens like once in a while. This happens a lot. Now, not everyone has them, and I have a theory that the universe has to want you to experience this for you to experience this, I think. I think it's a message. But I don't know. I really don't know anything about it. I experienced it, and it changed my life. And that's what I want to say about NDEs. So what are your thoughts about near-death experiences? Have you ever had one? If you had, get a hold of me. Contact me at beyondthebeyondpodcast@yahoo.com. And for now, I think I'm going to go away, and I will talk to you next week. This week, on the Geeks with Attitude podcast, me and my fellow geeks are going to review Deadpool, so you're going to want to hear that. Next week, I think we'll get into ghosts. I am looking for a co-host for the show. If any of my former colleagues want to join me on this experience, this is something we have talked about for years. I would love to either have you as my co-host, or I would love to interview you. So I'll reach out to you guys, and if any of you guys who have experienced the paranormal want to be on my show, well, I'd love to interview you. I'd love to hear your stories, because this is what this show is about. It's about stories, and it's about how those stories affect us. And it's also about knowing that there is more to this life. That in this life, we don't just go and work, eat, have sex, and defecate. That there is stuff that is far more amazing out there, but that we just don't understand yet. Science cannot grasp this. And they're scared of what they don't understand, so they say it's not real. But the thing is that not all scientific not all scientific scientific discoveries have been discovered. That's the thing. It's arrogant for us to think that we know everything. And with the coming of quantum physics and all sorts of new scientific discoveries, we might discover what the paranormal is. Because I believe that there is explanations for this. And I also believe there's another realm that we just can't quantify yet. But I think we will. I think in 100 years or so, I think eventually we will. I think it's extra dimensional, and I think once we look into that more, we'll discover it. So those are my feelings on near-death experiences, and I hope you had a wonderful time. And remember, you can contact me via Facebook, Philip Wilson, or you can contact me at the Beyond the Beyond Paranormal Podcast at Beyond the Beyond Podcast at yahoo.com. Beyond the Beyond Podcast at yahoo.com. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today, and I will see you soon. So, goodbye.